What's up, everybody? If you've been following the stock market, then you know that almost every software company has really taken a hit in the past few months. Many of these companies really have taken a hit over the past year or more, but it's accelerated recently. And we're looking at everything from Intuit, Adobe we've looked at on the channel. They're down almost 50% in a year. Monday.com down even more, 77% in a year. Salesforce close to cut in half. A lot of this drop has been just in the past month. These are massive companies. Even if we look at Microsoft is down over the past year, and from its peak, it's down roughly 25%. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video today. Is this a sector that we should stay away from? Are there opportunities here? I'll let you know what I think is interesting and what I just don't want to touch right now. As always, if you get value out of the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to join my Discord or grab my Google Sheets template where you can analyze stocks, then consider following me on Patreon. Link to that will be down below. Now, let's get into this video. And to start with, I think it should be pointed out that a lot of the companies that people are looking at, they've been trading for relatively expensive multiples. Just to use Intuit for an example, however, many of these companies, you're going to see a similar trend. A lot of these companies were trading for 40 times earnings, 50 times earnings. You're talking about, just a 2% free cash flow yield for many of these businesses. Intuit, even though they've essentially been cut in half, they're trading for 25 times earnings, a 4% adjusted free cash flow yield. And for those of you who are new or haven't seen my template, adjusted free cash flow, I always adjust for share-based compensation. It's a real expense to equity owners. And for many tech companies, it can be extremely high. Like for Intuit here, we see about $2 billion in share-based compensation. We need to deduct that out of their reported free cash flow. So free cash flow to me, about $4 billion for this business, currently still a 100-ish billion dollar company. These companies were extremely expensive. And even after these drops, it's not like these are dirt cheap multiples. I think there's a lot of investors that have gotten used to seeing 40 or 50 times multiples that now when you see a company trading for 25 times multiple or 4 or 5% free cash flow yield, they think that this is a bargain. And it may be. We have to look at every company on its own merits. But I think some of this drop is just also a normal mean reversion. Salesforce, for example, their growth has been slowing. They were growing north of 20% on the top line. Now that's slowing. That's dropped down quite a bit in the last few years, and they were trading for, 40, 50 times multiple. Now, a company like Salesforce is fairly well embedded into the workflow of many enterprises. But there's other companies where, how sticky they are, how entrenched they are, is not nearly as clear. For example, DocuSign. DocuSign is also down about 50-ish% over the past year. They were about 100. Now they're under $50 a share. This is a company, by the way, that back in 2021 used to be about a $50 billion business when they only had $1 to $2 billion in revenue. I've seen people say how cheap DocuSign is nowadays, that their free cash flow is about $1 billion, and with a $9 billion market cap, they have a double-digit free cash flow yield. But the fact of the matter is they have about $600 million in share-based compensation. Once you net that out, their free cash flow, the way I'm looking at it, is under $400 million. They have single-digit growth on the top line while trading for a 30 times multiple. This is not a cheap company, even after the drop. So that, in my opinion, is the first thing that is behind this software stock crash, is that in general, we are talking about companies that were very expensive. And now, of course, the main worry of everyone is AI. AI is either going to reduce the need for as many subscriptions to all of these companies, or even more threatening, AI is going to reduce the cost to develop software. Duolingo is a stock that we talked about on the channel not too long ago. I said it would have to be under $100 a share before I'd be interested. As it so happens, the stock is actually getting pretty close to being under $100 a share, right now trading about 110. But before, to make an app like Duolingo, you would need a team of a ton of engineers. It would take a significant amount of time, and that would be a type of barrier to entry in this market. Nowadays, that barrier to entry to build an app like Duolingo is way less than it was before. It's not like you can just ask AI, hey, build me an app that's exactly like Duolingo and it will shoot out a product. But if you have a small team of engineers and you just give them a couple months, I think they basically could do this with the help of AI. And one of the ironic things is that the companies that are talking the most about how much they can use AI, for example, Duolingo, I think they said something like they've doubled the amount of courses just over the past year. And they've done this with the help of AI. I might have got the numbers a little bit wrong, but essentially what they said is with AI, we can massively increase our content. And to me, if you were a Duolingo shareholder, that might sound great. But on the other hand, the companies that are best able to use AI are also maybe the companies that are most susceptible to being disrupted by AI. What I hear when you say that is another company can come along and with the help of AI, build a lot of courses, create content that's similar to ours. And yeah, Duolingo has their brand, and I'm not saying you could make a competitor to Duolingo in just a couple months that would have exactly the same brand strength. But in a world where software development is faster and cheaper, you have to ask, where is the value of the business coming from? Will their margins be able to remain, the same as what they are now? How vulnerable are they to competitors? Is it easy for customers to switch from you to someone else? So for me, when I'm thinking of companies that I think are powerful and are not going to be easily disrupted in this environment, they're going to be companies with very large network effects. For example, a company like Uber, we've talked about it before on the channel. I don't own Uber stock. I thought it was too expensive. But just imagine tomorrow that someone came along and they replicated exactly the Uber app. That likely wouldn't be a big issue for Uber because the true asset that Uber has is the network effect. If you're a rider, you want to use an app where the drivers are. If you're a driver, you want to use an app where the riders are. Well, that's Uber, and to a lesser extent, it's Lyft. Uber's an app. It's a software company in a sense, but it's very different than a software as a service stock where maybe someone's paying for a subscription every month and there's no network effect. You've had a moat around your business because no one has been able to come along and develop software in quite the same way. But if they did, the switching cost for your clients would be very low. Adobe is a stock that we've talked before about on the channel. If tomorrow you snap your fingers and instantly a company has a product that is identical to just as good as Instagram, would people use it? No, they wouldn't. Instagram has a strong network effect. But if tomorrow you snap your fingers and a company has a product that is just as good as Photoshop, would people use it? I've used Adobe products for many, many years. People are used to them. However, a lot of these products have been quasi-monopolies for a bit. A lot of creative professionals are dissatisfied with Adobe as a company. If you just look online, you'll know the sentiment I'm talking about. In fact, I just got an email from Adobe saying that they're raising their price on Creative Cloud. I think if there were a product that effectively had the exact same functionality as Photoshop, which there are competitors, but Canva, it's not quite the same. Affinity Photo, Figma, these things are interesting. They're getting close, but if you use Photoshop, you know it's different. I think if there were a product tomorrow that were identical to Photoshop, then gradually you would see some attrition in Adobe's customer base. There's no network effect with Adobe. Yes, there's some integration with other Adobe products, Premiere, After Effects, they talk with each other. But I can tell you as someone who's used these programs, that is not a priority. If there were a cheaper, comparable version to After Effects that existed in the market, then yes, I would try it. Again, AI is not there yet where you can just ask Claude to, write code for Photoshop or write code for After Effects. But are we really so far away where a room or small team of engineers who are dedicated to the task of essentially recreating Photoshop couldn't do that in a small amount of time with the help of AI? I think we could be fairly close to that being a reality. So for me, when I'm looking at software companies, they're not all created equal. Companies with large network effects, I think, are probably the strongest. And then for other companies, I just want to ask myself, what is the switching cost? How difficult is it for customers, for clients to move from one business to a competitor? Some stocks may have barrier to entry via regulation. So for example, TurboTax, which is owned by Intuit, even if you could replicate the software, you likely wouldn't be able to e-file your return necessarily. So in my opinion, something like TurboTax, not nearly as well protected as something like Uber, but they are in a better position than say something like Wix. Wix is a company you're probably familiar with. They allow people to make their own websites. And frankly, this is a task that AI does very well. If you ask AI to build you a website, it's going to do an okay job. This is my site right here. I have some computer program experience, but my degree is in mathematics. I'm not a software developer by trade. I was able to make this site myself. You can search stocks, look up news on those stocks, look at their financials. What does the balance sheet look like? What's the income statement look like? What do analysts think about the company? Can I look at their filings, recent insider trades, for example? And my template that I've been using in this video, it's accessing data from a database that I maintain and update with code that I wrote with the help of AI. So shameless plug here, if you want access to any of this or access to my Discord, consider checking out my Patreon. But my point here is I think the barrier to entry for a company like Wix is extremely low. I would only be interested in this business if I thought I was getting a dirt cheap price. So as far as what I like and what I don't like in this software adjacent space, First, a stock I want to talk about because I've been asked numerous times about it in the comments, and it's definitely in the bucket of something I'm not exactly interested in right now, and it is Constellation Software. This trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange, so CSU.TO. This is another company that has basically been cut in half. This company is still trading at 46 times operating income. Now, many people who are bullish on the name will say, it's only trading for 20-ish times free cash flow. But I think that's a bit of a misleading metric because you have to understand how this company works. Constellation Software is a serial acquirer. They go out and they buy up small niche vertical software companies for typically fairly cheap multiples. Often the companies they're buying up are fulfilling a small particular need for some industry. Could be something in insurance, could be something for library systems or something for utilities. They're often boring legacy businesses with single-digit organic growth, and free cash flow is not taking into account these acquisition costs. For Constellation Software, these acquisitions really are like CapEx for other businesses. But free cash flow, the way it's reported, is just operating cash flow minus CapEx. It's not operating cash flow minus CapEx minus acquisitions, which I would argue it probably should be for a company like Constellation Software. At least if you want to think of this as a business that is growing the top line at double-digit rates, then yeah, you need to take these acquisition costs into account when you're thinking about free cash flow. The whole reason investors focus on free cash flow is because you think, this is the money that can come back to us, can come back to shareholders at the end of the day. But if you want to grow the business and you need to use this money to go out and acquire other companies every single year, then this cash flow isn't free to come back to you. If you bring this cash flow back to shareholders, this 20-ish% free cash flow margin, then your top line is only going to grow organically at mid-single digits. Let's call it 5%. Even with a 10% operating margin, if I give this company a 25 times multiple, I'm still not really making money on this business. And if you want to assume that double-digit growth on the top line, call it 18% growth every year on the top line, well then you're not getting this free cash flow coming back to you. It's going to have to be used for acquisitions to fuel that growth. Either which way, Constellation Software to me doesn't really look all that cheap. Now, as far as a company that I do like that is adjacent to this space, we've talked about a number of businesses where even after the stock prices have been cut in half, they're still trading for 30 times multiples or whatever. But company I like here is Microsoft. I do not own Microsoft, but they're trading right now for a 21 times multiple, the way I look at it, which is enterprise value to operating income. Their largest profit driver is intelligent cloud, and in many ways, they're going to be a beneficiary of all of this AI adoption. More and more AI workloads means more and more cloud compute. Also, Microsoft 365, I think, is so deeply embedded, and everyone uses it, so there is a bit of a network effect going on. You send documents around, everyone needs to be able to open an Excel file. So I think Microsoft is much less vulnerable than a lot of other companies, but they've also sold off a bit. I think if I assume they're going to grow their top line at, 12-ish%, low double digits, which is a bit of a slowdown from where they have been, operating margins, free cash flow margins stay roughly similar, and I give them a 20 times multiple, I think you could expect about an 11% return on this stock today. I think the assumptions I made are nothing dramatic here, reasonably conservative. You certainly could put in more optimistic assumptions and get a higher IRR than me. But I think Microsoft is a decent bet here. Now, I don't own the stock yet. I want to buy it cheaper. And while many people may look at a 20 times multiple and may say, that's dirt cheap for Microsoft, I think it's easy to forget how cheap companies can become when there truly is fear, when there's real panic in the market. And even though we've seen prices drop quite a bit for some of these software stocks, the market as a whole is not panicked yet. There is no blood in the street. In fact, markets are just a couple percent off all-time highs. So for me, I like Microsoft stock today. It's a company that I'm looking at. The core of the business is extremely profitable. We might do a video where we do a deeper dive. I do have some concerns, but I would love to own this company and I would love to own it for a cheaper price. I do think Adobe is also interesting. I know I've been a little bit negative on it in this video, but the price today, just a 12 times multiple, I think it is getting pretty cheap. It's definitely a stock I'm looking at as well. And with that, I think we'll end here. If you got value out of the video, subscribe to the channel. Nothing here is advice to buy or sell any of these stocks. I just give you my opinion and I tell you what I'm doing with my money. And speaking of doing something with money, investors, hedge funds, they had to come out with their 13 Fs today for Q4. So we're going to be taking a look at what companies all of the big players were buying in the fourth quarter. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for everyone who supported me on Patreon, and I hope to see you all in another video.